I read that and I chuckled. I'm not going to lie. This is an unscripted. The number 5 fear in Americans today is the fear of what the living fuck?
I've built many startups. Most of them have failed. And so Bitcoin is exactly the place that I like to be.
We're going to end it right there. Well, the people have spoken, and you guys have spoken clearly. You would like me to talk about fear. And so, fear is what we will talk about. I was having a conversation with an individual, and I simply asked him the question. You don't need any of the other context, but I simply asked him the question, what do you fear? And the reason why I brought up this question was because I was getting a lot of pushback. I was getting a lot of excuses. I was getting a lot of yes, buts, sure, howevers, yeah, well, like these types of statements, right? So I could go over them. Doesn't matter. That's all I heard, though. All I heard were the first words. Yeah, but, well, so, that's all I heard. And so I finally asked this individual, I simply said, what do you fear? What is it that you fear? And we sat there for a moment and we discussed it. Well, actually, more than a moment. We spent damn near close to probably 20 minutes talking about this. And I can boil it down for you. It's the fear of the unknown. That is the meta. It's the fear of the unknown. But when we look at the larger play, the larger picture, the fear of the unknown is not helpful because every second that ticks by is the unknown. You just lived it. You were just there, right? Hopefully you were a highly engaged participant in that moment is the hope, and not some sort of passive blob that's living their lives through the lazy river in that water pool that you went to when you were 12 years old. Okay? Damn, those lazy rivers are awesome though, aren't they? You just get to sit there as a piece of sludge and have the water take you away. And you say, take you where? Take you to wherever that lazy river wants to go. And the irony is, the lazy river never ends. The lazy river never ends. There's an unseen force that makes sure that that lazy river goes in a loop forever and ever and ever. But it is not satisfying for us to sit merely at the meta level and say it's the fear of the unknown. We have to categorize these ideas. We have to categorize what is the fear. And for this individual, the fear was the fear, put it simply, it's the fear of what other people think. I've talked about this particular idea a lot. And frankly, I love talking about this idea because talking about this idea firms in my soul. Why? Not giving a fuck about what other people think is one of the very most powerful keys to success. It's that simple. I could give you many reasons why, but I'll leave it to 3. Number 1, caring about what other people think takes up time to care about what other people think. Why do you need to think about what other people think? Number 2, taking the time to care about what other people think defocuses you from what you should be thinking about, which is your business or your hustle or whatever you want to do exceptionally well. I hope you're not in that lazy river. And number 3, thinking or considering about what other people think about you means absolutely nothing because they will never operate from an understanding, a deep understanding, deep contextual understanding of what you're going through to a T. So they are merely making assumptions and assertions about what they think, given the limited information they have, about what they thought your idea or your tactic or your strategy or your action that you're going to take, whatever. Now, we cannot discount wise counsel. Wise counsel should always be asked for. But please don't get it twisted here, guys. When I mean what other people think, I'm talking about the internets. Okay, I'm talking about the community. I'm talking about the world at large. I'm not talking about your mentor or the wise counsel that's around you that helps you make great life decisions. No, you need to care about what they think. You've asked them to help you live a successful life. And if you don't have mentors, you don't have people like that, you should get some. Maybe we should do a podcast talking about that someday. Actually, I already have. So you guys can look it up at thebitcoin.pub/B90X. Check it out. Those are individuals that the wise counsel that you need. But giving two shits about what other people think about what you're doing in life is completely a waste of time. That fear is redonkulous. And so I thought on this after my conversation with him, because I've had so many conversations about fears before. And I don't mind revisiting it because it's important to quicken yourself, to remind yourself, to revalidate to yourself why certain things should not be wasted on. Certain things in life and certain fears in life and certain ideas or thoughts, and certain things they're just time bandits. They take away from productivity. They take away from what you should be doing. And so I thought more on this idea of fear. We all agree that fear is real. Fear is a very real thing. So after this conversation, I was like, you know what? I'm really good at helping them see the illegitimacy often in that fear in terms of what could happen from that fear. Now, is the fear real? Yeah, we acknowledge that you truly have this fear. This is something that is going through your mind. It's rattling through your bones. Granted. But to allow that fear to paralyze you to inaction, that's what we have to overcome. And so what really is the cross counter? What is the cross counter? What is the counter to fear? And so I thought about this. What is the counter fear? And it would be easy, and I've said this before, but it would be easy for me to simply say, well, let's just do it. Just go. And this is true. I mean, this is a muscle that it needs to be flexed, the muscle of execution. So many of you guys have a very strong muscle of paralysis. Like, that muscle is so ingrained and so calcified in your behaviors. Like, you don't even have to work at it anymore. New idea, really cool thing that you really would want to pursue. Nope. Paralysis. I flex that muscle so much, I don't even have to worry about it. My body will ensure. Everything in my body will ensure that I do nothing. On the opposite hand, you have to flex the muscle of execution, the muscle of doing, the muscle of stepping forward, like we've talked about this. But as I thought about this, I dug even deeper, and this is where I really want to go with you guys, a little bit deeper into this idea of fear. Like, what is the most fear? What is the most fear that you could have? And I thought on this. Like, what is the most fear that I could have? You know what my first thought was? My first thought was the movie Saw. Like, before I was married, I used to love watching scary-ass movies. Like, I had one friend, her name was Mie. We used to go, I think we saw almost every Saw movie. Like, it would just be our thing. Like, I would just hit her up, and we weren't even into each other or anything like that. I would just hit her up because I knew she was sick. Like, this was a sick woman, okay, guys? Just almost as mentally sick as I am. We didn't connect on many levels, but on the sickness of being so desensitized to horror movies, like we both had a level of extremeness where I would just hit her up and say, "Hey, the new Saw 4 came out, a new, whatever, like the new most gruesome movie of the summer just came out. You want to see it?" And she'd text back, she'd be like, "Hell yeah!" So we would go see these things. I mean, this is how decent. And I'll tell you the reason why. The reason why is because, I blame. There's a lot of people I could blame, but I won't tell you who I'm blaming here, okay? But I'll tell you the reason why I loved. I don't watch them anymore, but I used to love gore, like gore films, like just ridiculously. It's not even scary; it's just gory. Just like it's like, what is this? Why are we seeing like body parts thrown all over the place? And the reason I got into that is because I saw the movie It in two movies. I saw The Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't remember what age, but I believe it was in the 80s. It has to have been in the 80s. Nightmare on Elm Street. And then I saw the movie It, I think in the early 90s. Those two movies, ridiculously scary, gruesome. I mean, for its time, for sure. And like I watched these movies and these movies changed me, guys. They changed me. Like I don't know what it was. And so I thought, like, is this something that would be fearful? Like, would I be scared of being in positions like this? And I was like, no, I don't really know. I'm sure I'd be scared, but I don't know what it's like, and I don't know if that's the scariest thing that I could experience, being like chained up or being in a horror film. Then I thought about experiences in the past, right? Like scary moments of my past. I couldn't really think of any. I mean, I lived through them, didn't I? So you know how my attitude and my worldview is if I've lived through them, if I've persevered through them, then it couldn't have been that bad. Shit, right? It couldn't have been that bad. Brother didn't die. So then I thought about like my future. Like, what do I fear in the future? And I immediately cut that off because I don't fear anything in the future. I don't. There's nothing to fear in the future. The future is only unrealized gains. The future is only unrealized potential. I'm living to it. Right? So there's nothing there that I fear. And I was kind of stuck. I was like, well, what would be the most fearful thing? And as I kind of looked around, I was sitting at my desk here, I looked around to my piece, my firearm, because I have a concealed carry permit, and I am almost always carrying on my person. Having taken self-defense courses and firearm training, I am well equipped and well prepared. I believe if I ever have to use, I never want to ever use, but I'd rather be prepared than not. And I saw this piece, this firearm, and voila, I had my answer. Killing a man. That, right there, my friends, would be one scary-ass proposition, I think. Now, I've never done this, but where is it done a lot? War. That was easy. But war is easy these days, guys. War is easy these days. We just get to drop bombs on people, right? You can just press buttons nowadays and people just evaporate, get eviscerated into the ether. But what about war before guns? What about war before gunpowder? What about sword combat, spear combat? We're talking about your Romans, your Greeks, right? Face-to-face type shit. Like hardcore. In the fucking arena. Crushing it. I said crushing it. Like I'm getting excited about this. No, this is sword combat, guys. We're talking about killing a man. We're talking about, that's real. That's raw. the battlefield, guys. And we were talking about the battlefield of the mind. We don't live in the battlefield of the Romans and Greeks, guys. We don't live in our battlefield, as we talked about in previous podcasts, is the battlefield of the mind. And we will spend many more times talking about this particular topic because it's so important to be reminded of how powerful our mind really is. But man, on the battlefield, in the olden days, before gunpowder, before guns, before all the cheap button presses, right? Before the up, down, A, B, start, right? Before the easy cheat codes of killing, war was raw. War was savage. It was face to face. The battlefield was real. The smells were real. The sights were real. The blood was real. The emotions were real. And the God who ruled that battleground, that was the God of fear. I know it. It had to be. And so, like a good scientist that I am, well-educated as I am, I did some Google searching because I like to go deep on my thoughts because they allow me to make better informed decisions in the future as I see. And I am able to utilize what I read to advance myself. So I Googled, guys, and I found a great article by Edgar Jones from the Journal of Contemporary History in 2006. The title of this particular article, huge, long, very long, is called The Psychology of Killing, the Combat Experience of British Soldiers During the First World War. You see, I wanted to understand killing because I understood, here's my assumption, my hypothesis was, and I felt really affirmed in this hypothesis, is that the greatest fear you can have is having to kill another man, having to kill someone else. And so what did I need? I needed someone who's done the research on what happens to a man after they kill someone, or what happens to men before they kill. What happens to men in war when they are killing other people? Right, so I Googled stuff, guys. I found many articles, not quite hitting it on the head, and I finally found this one by Edgar Jones. I'll read you the title again. It's The Psychology of Killing, the Combat Experience of British Soldiers During the First World War. So you're going to learn something here, guys. I'll give you the TLDR, that took too long, did not read version. Do men enjoy killing? The answer is no. I'm going to read you the first, and then I'm going to go to the end. He says, quote, in recent years, revisionist historians, very important. You guys know how much I loved decentralized applications for the new world. Now, if you're new here and you don't know what a decentralized application is, I'll tell you what it is simply. A decentralized application allows that application to be proliferated around the entire world, and no one individual has control of it. Okay? So that's what decentralization allows for. The problem with history is centralized. And because history is centralized, history is constantly being rewritten so that we will never know what really happened. This is not some conspiracy, guys. This is real. This is why I love decentralized applications like Everypedia, decentralized applications like Library, so that information can be stored. Facts can be stored. History can be stored and not be revised all the time. This article is important given the fact that revisionist history is so real and so powerful that the history that you think you thought you knew is wrong. Let's start again. In recent years, revisionist historians have offered a new and potentially disturbing reason why most soldiers survived the experience of trench warfare without becoming psychiatric casualties. In The Pity of War, Niall Ferguson argued that for many in combat was not as devastating experience, but exciting, adventurous, and fun, precisely because of the danger. Furthermore, he suggested that men, quote, simply took pleasure in killing, end quote, and proposed that Freud's death instinct might be revived, quote, to explain the readiness of millions of men to spend 4 1/4 years killing and being killed. Ferguson took the radical position that the First World War was, in part, quote, belonged to the British soldiers' joy of combat. Men kept fighting because they wanted to. In an intimate history of killing, Joanna Burke acknowledged that recruits expressed an inherent resistance to killing, and that this had to be overcome by training. We're going to revisit this again in a second, guys. However, once civilians had been turned into effective soldiers, many found that killing was associated with, quote, intense feelings of pleasure, end quote, because commentators were stuck with the, quote, ease with which men were able to kill, end quote. She concluded incorrectly that men are unable to cope with killing were an aberrant group. No, not really. Troops in support roles immediately behind the front who were denied a, quote, outlet for aggressive tendencies were at the heightened risk of psychological disorders, so that more men broke down in war because they were not allowed to kill rather than under the strain of killing. Okay, these are what these revisionist historians are saying. Excuse me. The revisionist case was not entirely new, as Glenn Gray, an American philosopher, had argued that many men both hate and love combat, enjoying that not only the delight of comradeship, but also the delight of destruction. While not an infantryman himself, Gray, as a member of a counterintelligence unit during the Second World War, had been attached to fighting units in Italy and southern France, which he never really saw combat. He recalled that, quote, soldiers who cherished concrete emotions found the moral atmosphere of the front so much more endurable than in the rear areas that they willingly accepted the greater strain and personal danger of combat, conceding that there were some soldiers who simply endure war. Gray concluded, quote, happiness is doubtless the wrong word for the satisfaction that men experience when they are possessed by the lust to destroy and kill their kind. Thousands of youths who never suspected the presence of such an impulse in themselves have learned in military life the mad excitement of destroying. More recently, support for this hypothesis that soldiers enjoy killing came from Theodore Nadelson, a psychiatrist who treated ex-servicemen at the Boston Veterans Administration Hospital. Based on the testimony of 24 anonymized cases, that's not a lot, guys, 24 cases, Nadelson concluded that the true killers in Vietnam were, quote, ordinary men before enlisted. He argued that once the initial resistance had overcome in training, soldiers become addicted to the excitement and the sense of freedom created by the license to kill, while the act itself could assume the quality of sexual arousal or drug-induced ecstasy. Given that the veterans he had interviewed had all suffered from intractable psychiatric disorders, including post-traumatic stress disorder, Nadelson implicitly rejected any suggestion that killing protected against mental illness. The Joy of War case stands in contrast to S.L.A. Marshall's observations of U.S. forces engaged in Northwest Europe and the Pacific. He estimated that only 25% of infantrymen fired, and for good purpose during combat. Roy Jinker and John Spiegel, two American psychiatrists who had treated U.S. troops in North Africa, also concluded that few soldiers anticipate pleasure from destruction or killing, and, although some chronically hostile, aggressive individuals may be fascinated by the prospect of getting all the fighting they want, they frequently find it impossible to adapt their habitually irrescalable personalities to the controlled environment of teamwork and coordination necessary in battle. Basically saying that for those who did enjoy the idea of bloodlust, didn't get it as much as they wanted because they had to work as a team. And they can't be going out, all 300 style and trying to kill everybody around you. Here's why this is important, guys. Subsequently, and this is the whole idea of training, Dave Grossman suggested that increasingly realistic training, let's say that again. This is an article, this is 2006, but this is talking about research done back after the First and Second World War and Vietnam. Subsequently, Dave Grossman suggested that increasingly realistic training was needed to overcome the natural reluctance of recruits to kill. Techniques of desensitization and conditioning, including the replacement of bullseye targets with human representations that fell back on being hit eroded any resistance a serviceman might feel towards shooting an enemy. As a result, firing rate of 55% was observed in Korea, rising to 90% in Vietnam, according to the changes in training. This article reevaluates the accounts of soldiers and their doctors and examines new evidence from shell shock treatment units to identify the causes of psychiatric breakdown on the battlefield. Admissions for shell shock have been recorded to test whether the incidence of psychological disorder changed in response to different phases of battle. This data may help us to answer the long-debated question as to whether soldiers ceased to function because they had been worn down by the gradual attrition and physical hardships of trench warfare, or because they had been subjected to the greater risks of going over the top. In addition, the units from which the patients were referred have been analyzed to find out whether the frontline or combat support troops were particularly affected by the stress of battle. Guys, this was a long and drawn-out article, but the end is very simple. It is clear. I know that the revisionist historians want to paint our old ancestors as these bloodlusting, bloodlust-thirsty monsters, and certainly Hollywood does a fantastic job of reinforcing this idea. But to me, and I don't get how people can come up with these other ideas, and then again, it's just little old me. I never believed that men would ever want to kill. It is against the natural order of things. And let me go to the very end, going all the way down. Let's get, where is it? Okay, let's go to the end. Here we go. This is the summary of all their research. Here we go. Killing in war has remained largely taboo, and Burke and Ferguson are commended for exploring this emotive issue. There is perhaps something inherently ignoble about combat, knowledge denied to all apart from those who took part. Historians can, of course, seek approximations through oral testimony and contemporary accounts, but there are few certainties in the issues of killing. While soldiers who took pleasure in such acts undoubtedly existed, it is far from certain that they were typical. It is also undeniable that troops found periods of excitement in the adventure of war and the camaraderie of combat. Fear, as Burke argued elsewhere, was the most dominant emotion of battle. And if any enjoyment was achieved, it was due to the remarkable resilience of the human imagination. So my hypothesis was correct, guys. My hypothesis was correct. That the greatest thing that you can fear is being in a position to kill and take the life of another. So, is that something that we fear today? Is that something that you fear on the regular? I just debunked your entire fear issue, my friends. See what I did there? You have nothing to fear because you will never, pray God, ever be in a position where you have to take another person's life. You will never get that far. You have nothing to fear, if that's the most fearful thing that you could do. And so I did a little bit of more research, guys. And I looked up the top 10 biggest fears. You guys have already seen these lists. And I actually went to 3 different sources, and they were all relatively the same. Number 1 is planes. Fear of planes. Number 2, public speaking. Number 3, heights. Number 4, the fear of darkness. Number 5, the fear of darkness. Jeez. Number 5, the fear of intimacy. What a bunch of pussies. What kind of pussy-ass generation do we live in, guys? I read that and I chuckled. I'm not going to lie. This is an unscripted, this is a real, authentic Radical transparency show, guys, podcast, whatever you want to fucking call it. The number 5 fear in Americans today is the fear of intimacy. What the living fuck? I don't even know what to say, guys. Are you fucking serious? What a bunch of pansy-ass bitches running around. Number 6, the fear of death. Number 7, the fear of failure. Wow. It's number 7? Really? Number 8, the fear of rejection. A bunch of pussies. Number 9, the fear of spiders. Number 10, the fear of commitment. You know, if you're not like laughing inside just a little bit, guys, what has happened? What has the boomer generation fucked us that bad? Is that what happened? Did the boomers fuck us that bad? Some of you guys are boomers. Listen to this. Oh man, what happened, guys? The fear of darkness, the fear of intimacy, the fear of rejection, the fear of commitment. You know what all these boil down to? The fear of public speak. You know what this boils down to? It boils down to the very beginning of today's show, my friend. The fear of what other people think about you. Guys, you see what I did? I just debunked your whole like fear thing. You ain't never gonna fear the greatest fear of being on a battlefield, having to take another man's life, with the potential of that guy putting his spear or his sword right between your eyes, or right in your side, or cutting off your leg. 'Tis but a scratch, guys. You're not gonna be there. Okay, you're not gonna be an axe battler. Okay, it's not gonna happen. So what are you scared of? What are you fearful of? You're not feared of heights or planes or death or darkness or spiders, commitment or failure, rejection, what? Are you scared of what other people think about you? I'm gonna give you the number 1 way to reduce the fear in your life. It'll be the best way. And you know what? You're going to have to remind yourself. And you're going to have to preach this to yourself every day. You're just going to have to do it. You're just going to have to do it. I had to do it. You just have to preach to yourself every day that it does not matter what other people say or what other people think about your dreams in life. Because guess what? You're not going to be around in 100 years. And neither are they. Let that sink in. Like, you're not going to be around in 100 years. Okay? They're not going to be around in 100 years. Now, you could look at this fatalistically and say, well, shit, bro, that's fucking depressing. I'm not going to be around in 100 years. Well, I don't give a fuck. I just be what I'm going to be. Well, you know what? I would look at it the other way. I'm not going to be at 100. I better make this the best damn time of my life. Because there is no dress rehearsal. There is no practice in life. There is only time, tick, 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 ticking away. And you're not going to be here in 100 years. They're not going to be here in 100 years. So what are you scared of?